Again, it's a rich thing.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to have a little Q&A session where I answer your frequently asked questions on YouTube and also a couple of questions that have been asked specifically for this video on my Discord server. So let us get right into it. Alright, now before we get into the actual IDE, I want to mention that if this video performs well, I'm going to make a second part, and if you want to ask questions to be included in the second part, of course, I cannot guarantee that I'm going to include the questions, but if you want to provide some questions that you would like to see answered in the future video, let me know in the comment section down below what you want to know, and of course, if you want to have a higher chance of being featured in the video asked on the Discord server, I have a channel there. YouTube questions is the name right now, where you can just write the questions in that channel, and I'm probably going to answer them in the next video. Of course, again, no guarantee, but probably you're going to be included if the question is interesting and makes sense. So let's get started with a pretty simple question. The first one is, what's the IDE you are using, or which development environment are you using? And of course, this depends on the video that you're asked a question on, but most of the time I'm using PyCharm, which is the JetBrains environment, the IntelliJ for Python, in combination with the IDEA Vim plugin. So I'm using the Vim key bindings in the PyCharm development environment. In other videos, I have been using NeoVim, which is a full terminal editor. So it's just Vim with a lot of different plugins, which is also a great development environment and a great IDE, you could say, or a great editor with a lot of plugins. But of course, it's only for those people who are willing to use Vim as their main editor. So depending on the video you're asking that on, maybe it was also asked on the Go programming tutorial series, then it's Goland. If it's asked on the C++ tutorial series, I think it's NeoVim or Visual Studio Code. So I don't really use anything besides those editors. Most of the time it's going to be PyCharm with the IDEA Vim plugin. Now, next up, we have a question that triggers me quite often depending on the way it's asked. Now, some people ask it politely and normally, and that's of course not a problem, but some people are just super annoying in the way they ask this question. And this is the question of, where is the source code, or is there a source code to this video, or can you share the source code to this video? Now, some people ask it politely and normally. For example, do you have the source code, or can you please upload the code to GitHub? Or some people ask, can I get the source code, and so on. But some people ask stuff like, please give code with 1,000 E's in the please, or can you share the code please with 1,000 E's again. Sometimes not even full sentences, sometimes no grammar whatsoever in the comment, and 1,000 E's, and sometimes even the same comment below the same video, which is super annoying. And then, this is my favorite, some people ask, from where I can copy. Now, first of all, that's not a full sentence. That's not a grammatically correct sentence. But then again, this is also the number one reason why I don't share my source code. Or my source code is maybe not the right term, but why I don't share source code to simple projects. Now, if I develop a library that's a little bit more complex, like Vidstream or Neural Intense, or the camera classifier was a pretty comprehensive project, those source codes are on GitHub because those are pretty large projects, and it makes sense to look into them while you're coding yourself. Now, if the video, however, is zoom clone in Python, or stock prediction in Python, or some simple Pokédex, for example, some simple video, I don't share the source code because I don't want to encourage people to copy and paste. Because what would be the value of sharing the source code? Usually, it's people just want to copy the code. And it's not that I have a problem with people copying my code, but that's just not the way I want to teach programming in. Because I don't think that you get any value out of the video if you just copy the code and now you have the program and you can do some nonsense with it. For example, for the stock prediction tool, what is the value of me giving you the code for that project? If you are not able to code that project, to code along with that project while you have the source code on the screen, there is no reason for you to get the source code, because first of all, as I mentioned in the video, this is not something that you should be using to actually predict stock prices or crypto prices or anything. So it's not really something that you just want the script so that you can use it, because you shouldn't be using it in the real market because it's not going to give you good results. And if you're not using it, the only value of that video is educating yourself on how recurrent neural networks work and how such a prediction could be done using machine learning. So the only value of that video is you learning how it works and you learning how to implement that algorithm or that logic, that machine learning logic in Python. And by copying the code, you don't get that. Now, some people copy the code or want to have the code so that they can cross-check if they have some errors. But then again, I think that if you're not able to just troubleshoot the code yourself using Google and error messages, you should probably not be watching Predicting Stock Prices with Python, but Python Beginner Tutorial or Python Intermediate Tutorial. If you're not able to do these basic things with Python and you need the source code to compare against, then you probably shouldn't be working on such a project yet. So I don't see any value in sharing the source code for small projects like the stock prediction or the Zoom clone, which basically is just, a very basic Python code where you just open sockets and close sockets and you have some methods and you have a basic graphical user interface. If you cannot code that on your own while watching the video where I literally show all of the code, then you should probably not be working on that. And if you just want to copy the code, then that makes you a script kiddie, and I don't want to share my code in that way. So I share all of the code, but I don't want to encourage people to copy and paste the code. All right, so that was a pretty long rant against people who are copying and pasting. So let's continue with the next question, which is pretty easy to answer, and it's, what's your PyCharm theme? In PyCharm, I use the one dark theme, so not the basic dark theme of the PyCharm environment, but the one dark theme. Next question, what is your age? I am 22 years old. So the next subset of questions is, how can I contact you? I need your help, or I have an idea, or I want to talk to you about something, or anything similar to that. Where can I contact you, basically is the question. Now, I have multiple channels where you can contact me. First of all, you can contact me on Instagram. You can contact me in the comment section. You can contact me via mail. However, if you contact me via mail, please make sure that you're having a business inquiry, because if you're sending me source code via mail and asking for help, you're not going to get an answer. On my mail, I only answer when it is something related to business or related to collaborations and so on. If you want to just chat and if you want to just talk and ask questions, the best way to contact me is through my Discord server. So you just go in the description down below and you click on the Discord server, you can join, and then you can post into the different channels where I am also active quite often. So you can ask into general, you can chat into general, you can ask questions in questions, you can ask questions in programming, you can make video requests, you can also ask questions for this particular video or video series. But one thing that I can tell you is that I usually don't give one-on-one support all the time. Sometimes if you ask in the right moment, maybe I'm online and I can help you with your code. But usually when people ask very specific questions, they fall into two categories, which I both do not answer usually. The first one is the question is easily Googleable and very, I want to say ignorant, but it's a question that you just shouldn't be asking, because it's not one of those intelligent questions where, you actively engaged in the problem and you try to solve it and you don't know what to do. But it's stuff like, I get this error message, what to do? Or some punctuation symbol is missing in your code and that's why it's not compiling. So it's either something that you can Google within 2 seconds or 2 minutes maybe, or it's something that shows that you're actually working on a project that you shouldn't be working on because you're lacking the very basic Python skills, for example, if it's Python. Or the second category is that it is actually a good request, it's actually a good question that you're asking, but it's too complicated for me to solve in a short period of time. So it's not something that I can look into with my expertise and I can say, okay, this is what you need to do. It's an intelligent question and it's not easily Googleable, but you can fix it like that. It's most of the time something that I would have to look into myself for multiple hours in order to solve. So most of the time, if you ask for help with your code, I'm not going to respond, or at least I'm going to say that I don't have the time to answer that, because it's either a question that is not very intelligent, or a question that is intelligent but too difficult to answer in a short period of time. Alright, so we're done with the YouTube questions for this video. We're now going to move on to the Discord questions. And there I had a channel, YouTube questions, where I announced that I'm going to make this video a couple of minutes ago. And then I said, okay, if you ask questions in this channel, you're probably going to be featured. No guarantee, of course, but some people asked some questions and I'm going to answer them now, or some of them now. And we're going to start with a question that a moderator asked. The name is hex digits, or in hex digits ASCII code, which basically means empty. This guy is from France, as you can see in his username. And he asks, how and why did you start learning Python? And actually, Python was not my first programming language. So I actually started coding in batch, or in BAT files, which is not actually coding, which is actually more like Windows shell scripting, you could say. And then I moved on to Visual Basic, then I did Java, then I actually looked into C# and C++. And then in school someday I had one of those voluntary things that you can do in school. I don't know what it's called actually, but it was once a week for 1 hour or for 2 hours, you had this subject where you basically learned about programming. And there I was taught Python. It was more like network scripting Python, so we didn't actually talk about basic programming concepts, but more like how can you do network related stuff in Python. And we played around with some modules, but that's how I learned Python. Or how I started learning Python, but actually this was not really me learning Python. This was just a school subject. Later on, I picked up Python and I started learning it because I found it was cool. And whenever you want to do something quickly, you just use Python. So I thought this is a good language to know. And over time, I noticed that I'm really interested in machine learning and data science and Python in general, or that Python is a very good language for those fields. And I started doubling down on Python. And nowadays, I would say the language that I'm most comfortable with is Python. For the longest time, it was Java. But especially in the last couple of years, I'm constantly coding in Python. So yeah, I guess I'm pretty comfortable with Python now. The next question is by Cerberus, and this user actually asked 3 questions, so we're going to cover all of them at once. The first question is, what are the most useful Python libraries? And I don't think that I can answer that question because I don't think there is an answer necessarily. It depends on what you're working on. If you're working in networking, you're not going to think that NumPy is the most important library out there or the most useful library out there. So you're going to rely on sockets and requests and multi-threading maybe, and multiprocessing and URLlib and other networking related libraries. Whereas if you're into cybersecurity, you're going to work with pawn tools. And if you're into data science and machine learning, you're going to care about NumPy and Matplotlib and pandas and maybe sklearn, and maybe you're going to use TensorFlow or PyTorch. So I don't think that you can say there is a most useful Python library. Maybe the one that I'm using the most is NumPy, because whenever you're doing something with machine learning or computer vision or data science, you're going to use NumPy. So if you want to know which one I'm using the most, it's probably NumPy. The second question is, what kind of things do you code outside of your videos? And this question is actually kind of interesting because oftentimes I do start projects just for fun on the side, just for myself, some finance stuff, some management stuff, some web scraping stuff, or some drawing classifiers, some machine learning stuff, some computer vision stuff, whatever it is. But usually if a project is actually interesting and I finish it, it always ends up going to YouTube, or at least to GitHub, or at least I make a blog post on it, because there's no reason to not use something that I have already coded, something that I have already implemented, and make a video out of it. So why should I not recycle it? I think recycling is maybe not the best word for it, but why should I not use something that I have already developed to make a video? So I don't have to actually do something specifically for videos. I can just code something for myself, and if it's interesting, I'm going to make a video on it. So usually all the things that I do outside of my videos that are coding related end up on YouTube sooner or later. Now, the last question from this user is, do you use other languages than Python, C++, and Go? It depends on what you mean by use. I actually don't think that I really use any other language than Python for myself. Now, for university, I use all kinds of languages. I have to code in C, I have to code in Java and JavaScript and so on. But for me personally, when I do stuff on my computer for my everyday coding life, I don't use anything but Python because there's no reason to use anything like Python. I'm not working on 3D games. I'm not working on anything that would require me to go down to C, C++, unless I'm doing CTFs, of course. Then I have to deal with C and assembly. But usually whatever I do in Python. If you're asking if I'm capable of coding in other languages, then yes, I think after Python, the language that I'm most comfortable with is Java. Even though I don't really like Java, I'm pretty good at Java compared to other languages. Then I would say C, C++, and then Go and other languages. The only thing that I might be using on a regular basis besides Python is PHP and JavaScript, but only for WordPress. So when I have to fix something there or I have to put in something manually, I usually use PHP because WordPress is based on PHP. But whenever I code something, an application, a tool for myself, a script, I always use Python. So maybe Bash sometimes on Linux to automate stuff, but mostly Python. Let's get to the next questions. Muffin is asking, do you like to travel? If yes, do you have any dream location you would like to visit in the future? Yes, I do like to travel. I travel quite often, except for 2020. I think I travel like 3 or 4 times a year, and I visit different countries. Now, I don't travel too far usually, so most of the time it's quantity over quality, but I'm going to change that soon, hopefully. When it comes to a dream location, I don't think that I have one dream location that I want to visit. But I'm interested in many different countries. Now, one country that interests me a lot might sound pretty unexciting to most people because it's not exotic, but I'm really interested in the United States of America. I have been to New York once, and I would like to visit it again, and I would like to visit all major cities in the United States because I'm really interested in skyscrapers and business areas and business cities. Besides that, I'm also interested in Japan, in China, in most of Europe, but I have seen a lot of Europe already. I'm interested in the UK, which I have not been to yet, and also to a lot of more exotic countries like Australia or Thailand or Singapore or Indonesia and so on. So those are the locations that I would like to travel to. So Mrinmoy is asking, when did you start your programming career? Now, when you say career, I'm going to assume that means when did you start coding? And the answer to that is at the age of 9. So the 9 in NeuralNine actually stands for the age I started coding at. When I say started coding at, that means writing basic batch scripts and playing around with Visual Basic. Visual Basic 2008 was the edition that I was using then. And I was just creating some simple GUIs, some simple scripts that delete files or that spam something and so on. So just stupid stuff on the side. Then sooner or later, I learned Java and so on. I already talked about that, but I started programming at the age of 9. So last but not least, we have 3 questions remaining, and I'm going to answer them here at once because either they have been asked already or the answer is going to be pretty short. The first one is by Dart. Why don't you use Kivy MD or Kivy for making GUI stuff instead of being stuck to old-fashioned libraries? Just because I'm not dealing a lot with GUIs in Python, so I don't have a reason for that. Then VG08 is asking, which languages do you know? Which one was your first language? What is your favorite language? I already talked about which languages I know. My first language was Bash or Visual Basic, if you count that, or Java, if you want to hear an actual programming language that is relevant right now. And my favorite programming language for most things is Python, yes. And the last question by LD is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And then he says career in parentheses, which basically means where do you see yourself in 10 years career-wise? And the answer to that question is a little bit difficult because, of course, I know where I'm going. I have my direction and I have my goals. But 10 years is a pretty long time, and those goals and ideas and values can change over time. So I'm not sure if when I'm answering the question right now, it's going to be the same in 2 years even. So maybe I change my opinions. And also one thing is that I don't think that you should talk about your goals too often, and especially not publicly, but not because you want to make a secret out of them or because it's dangerous to talk about your goals. I just think that when you hype something before it actually happens, it's just not good for your psyche. So if I tell you right now, I want to do this and I want to have that amount of money and I want to have that car and I want to be leading that company and I want to build that and so on, I think that you already get a lot of the excitement out before you actually get to that point. So I don't really want to talk about my goals in too much detail, especially when it comes to 10-year goals. But what I can tell you is that I'm definitely planning to stay in the IT field. As a business owner, I don't want to be employed. That's what I can tell you. I can see myself as a content creator as well, but my focus will shift over time, I think, to something that is actually more like a software business. So not just being a YouTuber for the next 10 years. Maybe I'm going to do YouTube on the side. I don't know about that. Or not just YouTube, but general content production. But definitely I want to stay in the IT field. I have no ambitions to go into something else. Maybe I'm going to combine programming and machine learning and computer science with stuff like medicine or with stuff like finance and stock trading and stuff like that. But I definitely want to stay in the IT field as of right now. But besides that, I don't think that it is reasonable to talk about any other details of where I see myself in 10 years. Alright, so that's it for this little Q&A today. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and subscribing to this channel. I'm probably going to make a second part of this video series if this video performs well. And if you want to be featured in that second video, you have to ask the question that you want to have answered below this video in a comment section down below. Or you can go to Discord. There is a channel called YouTube Questions. There you can just post your questions. There's no guarantee that I'm going to include the questions, but if the questions are reasonable and not annoying, like some of the questions that I showed here, or actually it was just one category of question. But if the questions are reasonable and not already answered in other videos, then I'm probably going to answer it in the next Q&A session. So ask your questions in the comment section, or if you want to increase the likelihood of getting an answer, ask them on Discord in the YouTube Questions channel. Besides that, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.